The National Desk, America's News Now. Developing now, it is the deadliest U.S. fire in 100 years, and we don't even know the full extent of the casualties on the Hawaiian Islands.
Nothing can prepare you for what I saw during my time here, and nothing can prepare them for the emotional toll of the impact that this severe event has taken on them.
And indictment watch. The next round of charges against Donald Trump could be coming any day or minute as the Georgia grand jury hears new testimony.
We've got to put these facts and figures and details and reality on display for America, specifically for Republicans to see what reality really is.
And critical drug shortages leaving cancer patients around the country without the tools to fight for their lives. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Eugene Ramirez. The reported death toll from the wildfires in Hawaii has now risen to 96. But officials say many more people are still missing tonight as crews search through the rubble. And as of Sunday, only 3% of the scorched areas in Maui had been searched with cadaver dogs. We're now talking about the deadliest wildfire in modern U.S. history. Governor Josh Green of Hawaii has scheduled a news briefing tonight for 9:30 p.m. Eastern. But at this hour, what we know is the damage so far is estimated at $6 billion. Roughly 85% of the fire in Lahaina has been contained after it destroyed most of that historic town. FEMA has more than 250 workers there on the ground, and the Hawaii National Guard has activated more members. The Small Business Administration is also there now, meeting with business owners.
We can't begin to understand the grief and the loss that these communities are going through. What we saw on the ground is nothing short of catastrophic or heartbreaking.
As we await more details from Governor Green tonight, other officials warning of health concerns related to the fires. They say Maui will likely have toxic particles in the air and drinking water long after the fire's over. The state toxicologist says it could take weeks or months to clean up all the pollutants. This as some locals have returned to their homes while officials warn them it may still not be safe to do so. Now, the cause of the fires, that's still under investigation right now. But a new lawsuit points to the main power company for Hawaii, Hawaiian Electric Industries. That lawsuit claims the utility kept power lines live during Hurricane Dora, sparking the fires. Hawaiian Electric's stock dipped to a 13-year low this morning when that lawsuit was announced. Fire officials say they're looking into all possible causes. Turning now to the dangerous heat still impacting large areas of the U.S. More than 106 million Americans are under heat alerts today. Unlike earlier this summer, it's not affecting Arizona. This time around, we're talking about the Northwest along parts of the West, South, and the Southeast. Spokane, Washington, you can see temperatures of reach 104 degrees there this week. Places like Portland, 106. Now, keep in mind, many older homes there in the Pacific Northwest don't even have air conditioning. It's expected to cool down there later in the week, but the dangerous conditions, those could last longer in the Southeast. And tonight, more than 36 million Americans could face some severe weather. Strong or severe thunderstorms are forecast across parts of the Midwest, Kentucky, and Tennessee, extending east to the Mid-Atlantic region. What you see here, marked in yellow on this map, that highlights the places seeing the most risk tonight. New tonight, the Fulton County website may have leaked some potential indictments against former President Donald Trump today, briefly posting 13 charges, including the serious felony of violating the RICO Act. Now, this document was taken down almost immediately, and prosecutors openly stated that no indictment has been made yet. Now, that said, the Fulton County grand jury continues right now to hear testimony from witnesses, as they've been all day in the case of state election interference by Donald Trump and his allies. District Attorney Fani Willis there has been building her case, and charges could be coming either tonight or tomorrow. Now, one indication that these proceedings are really moving faster than expected, witness depositions originally scheduled for tomorrow were moved to today, including that of former Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan. Meantime, Donald Trump unleashing a series of social media posts today in response, attacking both the grand jury proceedings in Georgia as well as the judge overseeing his case in Washington, D.C. Several times, the former president referring to the Georgia Attorney General as phony Fani Willis. He suggested Georgia Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan should not testify before the grand jury, and also questioned the impartiality of the judge on the January 6th case, calling her very biased and unfair. Trump has been warned that speaking about certain parts of the case could result in a quicker trial, and that's to reduce the risk of a tainted jury or witness intimidation. Now, if and when Donald Trump is indicted in Georgia, you may be able to see what happens in court on television. State law there requires cameras be allowed into judicial proceedings with the judge's approval, and indictments are required to be made public immediately. In your money tonight, this week, the Biden administration celebrating the anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act. It's a 10-year plan that came with a pledge to lower health care costs, promote clean energy, and make the tax code fairer. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar looks at where things stand 1 year in.
When President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law, the consumer inflation rate was 8.5%. Now it's 3.2%. But whether this legislation is the reason for that drop is up for debate. The law capped the price of insulin at $35 for Medicare recipients. Eli Lilly followed suit, duplicating that price cap regardless of a patient's insurance.
It's important that we continue to see the price of health care, especially prescription drugs, go down.
When the IRA was signed into law, the average price of a gallon of regular gas was close to $4. After declining over the year, it's back up to $3.85, according to AAA. Despite a lower inflation rate, overall prices are almost 18% higher than they were before the pandemic. Republicans on the campaign trail are making that their focus.
Joe Biden launched a war on energy on day one.
The IRA, though, is banking on clean energy, in part by using tax credit incentives for companies to lower their emissions. Anirudh Sharma, CEO of London-based Carbon Clean, says it's what drove his carbon capture technology company to open a new U.S. headquarters in Houston.
For us, because of IRA, the business inquiries for decarbonization technology has gone up by about 64%. The next step is to actually hire more people and double our existing strength in the U.S.
The White House acknowledging the Inflation Reduction Act is more about long-term investments than immediate relief for high prices. At a campaign event in Salt Lake City last week, President Biden said, quote, "I wish I hadn't called it that because it has less to do with reducing inflation than it does to do with dealing with providing for alternatives that generate economic growth."
Now, as for what is reducing inflation, economists generally point to higher interest rates from the Federal Reserve, which we talk about all the time, supply chain bottlenecks being resolved, and global oil supply stabilizing after the shocks from Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
And Atra, you spoke to the White House about the president's low approval rating on the economy. What are they saying about it?
Yeah, Chief of Staff Jeff Zients talked to a small group of reporters, and he told us they are very aware that public sentiment is not aligning with what they view as huge economic accomplishments through the IRA and the CHIPS and Science Act and other legislative accomplishments. They're aware of polls like one from Reuters out last week that shows only 33% of adults approve of how the president's handling the economy, and even lower number, 29%, approve of inflation. And Zients told us it just takes time for people to, as he put it, feel it.
Atra El-Nashar in Washington tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.
6 former Mississippi officers pleaded guilty today to state charges for torturing 2 black men in a racist attack. These ex-officers entered a house without a warrant back in January and assaulted Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Terrell Parker with stun guns and other objects for an hour and a half. Jenkins was shot in the mouth. The former officers face prison sentences ranging from 5 to 30 years. They could get even more time when sentenced in federal court in November. 4 divers are recovering tonight after being rescued off the coast of North Carolina. The Coast Guard says the 4 men were about 46 miles southeast of Cape Fear River. They went missing yesterday after diving from a boat 63 miles from Myrtle Beach. And since then, multiple Naval and Coast Guard crews were out searching for them. A Montana judge ruled in favor of 16 young climate activists who accused state agencies of violating their right to a clean and healthful environment. The judge found the policy Montana uses to evaluate requests for fossil fuel permits is unconstitutional, as it does not consider the effects of greenhouse gas emissions. It's now up to the state legislature to decide how to update the policy to meet that ruling. And this comes as the administrator of NASA says it's self-evident the Earth is heating up based on record-breaking temperatures last month, and humanity needs to act.
The last 9 years are the warmest on record. And folks, Mother Nature is sending us a message. And that message is we better act now before it's too late to save our climate.
Scientists at NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration confirmed this past July shattered the previous record set in 2019 by 0.2 degrees Celsius. It's not over just yet. They warn temperatures will be even higher next year based on the expected impacts of El Nino. It's that time of year. Kids headed back to school, and some should expect AI technology in the classroom. The National Desk's Kara Duffy explores the pros and cons of artificial intelligence in class.
If your child is connected to the internet or has a phone, I would say 9 out of 10 chance they likely use AI already. So if you're trying to prevent them from learning about it or prevent them from using it, it's too late. The genie's out of the bottle. We're not able to put it back.
Craig Agranoff is a marketing and technology expert based in Boca Raton. He says, like any new technology, artificial intelligence in the classroom does come with some pros and cons.
But the cons, they can cheat on tests and assignments, and it's a serious concern. It can give students an unfair advantage and undermine the values of their education.
He says the potential benefits, though, outweigh any concerns, encouraging schools to use the powerful tool to their advantage, using AI software and apps to create a more interactive, personalized learning experience.
And that means that students can learn at their own pace and focus on the areas where they most need the help, which is very important. You can also get real-time feedback from AI.
Teachers are also turning to AI, but to create lesson plans and grade papers.
It could free up time so they could focus on more important tasks like providing individualized attention to students.
Agranoff's advice to parents who may be concerned. He says knowledge is power, so ask your kid questions about it. How do they use AI? Have them show you how it works, and most importantly, make privacy a top priority.
It's collecting data on them. So it'll collect, let's just say as a student, it'll collect on their performance, on their interests, on their personal information. And that data can be used to track the student's progress, personalize their learning experience, and target them with ads.
That was Kara Duffy reporting. Coming up here on the National Desk, is a criminal trial for the first son inevitable? What Hunter Biden's attorney is saying about the appointment of a special counsel to the case. Meantime, Nestle recalling cookie dough that may have pieces of wood in it, the type of dough you'll want to look out for at the grocery store and in your pantry. And why new armrests on benches in a Rhode Island community are causing some controversy. We'll tell you all about it in 90 seconds. Hunter Biden's lawyers are accusing prosecutors of backtracking on that deal that could have given the president's son some immunity in exchange for him pleading guilty to tax-related charges. In a new court filing, the lawyers attest the agreement that fell apart last month should still be binding. Attorney General Merrick Garland elevated prosecutor David Weiss, who conducted that deal, to special counsel Friday to investigate Hunter Biden, or continue that investigation, I should say. Peter Schweitzer, the president of the Government Accountability Institute, raised a question this morning on whether this development is just more political theater by the Biden administration.
He wanted to let the Biden team know we're not going to go after you, but he wanted to maintain the mirage that they were still investigating, because of course, if the investigation continues, that means David Weiss can't talk to Congress and he can't talk to the media because that would compromise the investigation. So it was a perfect political solution, but not a just solution. I certainly don't think it was a legal one.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin calling out Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville again for holding up more than 300 defense nominations in the U.S. Senate. On a day that the Navy was honoring outgoing Chief of Operations Admiral Michael Gilday, Secretary Lloyd criticized not having his replacement, Acting Chief Admiral Lisa Franchetti, confirmed and ready to go.
Because of this blanket hole, starting today, for the first time in the history of the Department of Defense, 3 of our military services are operating without Senate-confirmed leaders. This is unprecedented, it is unnecessary, and it is unsafe.
President Biden stepped into the negotiations between the United Auto Workers Union and the big 3 auto manufacturers in Detroit. He asked all sides to work together to forge a fair agreement, but also wanted to make it clear where he stands and praised the history and importance of the UAW. The auto workers contract ends September 14th, and they're threatening to strike if a new labor agreement is not in place by then. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has ordered a major increase in weapons production. That's according to state media there. He reportedly toured munitions factories over the weekend, and this comes ahead of joint military drills between the U.S. and South Korea next week to prepare against North Korean nuclear threats. A woman who pleaded guilty for her role in covering up Vanessa Guillen's murder is set to be sentenced in federal court today. Guillen was a soldier at Fort Hood, now known as Fort Cavazos. She went missing in 2020, and her remains were found several months later. Cecily Aguilar admitted to helping her boyfriend dismember and hide the woman's body. Aguilar faces a maximum 30-year sentence and $1 million fine. Going by the numbers now, Nestle recalling some of its chocolate chip cookie dough because it may have pieces of wood in it. 2 batches of the Break and Bake bar products made in April are the ones that you want to look out for here. No one has reported getting sick or injured, thankfully. Nestle says it's an isolated issue, but anyone who bought this dough, you can take it back to the store for replacement or a refund. Meantime, Toyota recalling the Tundra and Tundra hybrid pickup trucks due to a fire risk. The company says it affects about 168,000 of its 2022 and 2023 models here in the U.S. A plastic fuel tube could rub against a brake line and then develop a fuel leak, which could increase the risk of fire for these trucks. Drivers can have their fuel tube replaced by a Toyota dealer, of course, at no cost. The creator of the longest-running musical in history has died at the age of 95 from cancer. Tom Jones, you see him on the left here, wrote and directed The Fantastics, a mock version of Romeo and Juliet. He was inducted into the American Theater Hall of Fame in 1998. And the rapper Magoo has died at the age of 50. He collaborated with stars like Missy Elliott and Timbaland. The news coinciding with the 50th anniversary of hip-hop. Magoo's cause of death has not been made public. Tonight, cancer patients across the country facing a gut-wrenching reality right now. The critical drugs that could save their lives aren't available. Spotlight on America discovered this is not the first time these shortages have happened, and experts say we've failed to find long-term solutions to ensure that it doesn't happen again. National investigative correspondent Lisa Fletcher has this story.
Kristen Landau is an energetic mom of 2, chasing her young boys around a busy Iowa home. But last year, a stage 4 cancer diagnosis at just 39 years old threatened her family's future.
I didn't know if I was going to make it to my 40th birthday, but I did.
She did, thanks to aggressive treatment and a chemo drug called carboplatin. Then, this spring, the drug that shrunk her tumor and was halting the spread of her disease was no longer available.
It's scary to be back in the what if phase. What if this doesn't work? What if they can't get my drug back? You want me to hold on to that?
Kristen is among as many as 500,000 Americans dealt the devastating double blow of a cancer diagnosis and unavailable life-saving drugs. According to the FDA, 15 drugs for cancer treatment were in short supply in August. Among them, drugs called cisplatin and carboplatin, sterile injectables that are some of the most commonly used and relied upon chemotherapy drugs.
Those drugs are the backbone of therapy for lung cancer, ovarian cancer, bladder cancer, testis cancer. And the next best treatment is just that. It's not as good.
Oncologist Dr. Kristen Rice showed Spotlight on America this email from June from the supplier that provides drugs for her patients. Look at the words next to these essential drugs: strictly allocated, limited supply, backordered, production problems.
What was your immediate reaction when you saw that email?
Terror.
According to the National Comprehensive Cancer Network, this summer, 93% of cancer centers surveyed reported a shortage of carboplatin. 70% were short on cisplatin. The cancer drugs in short supply are older, generic medications, ones that are cheap to buy, as low as a few dollars a dose. So companies aren't incentivized to make them, and few do. The ones that do manufacture them aren't here in the U.S. They're largely located overseas, in China or India.
That makes it even harder for the FDA to oversee the quality and to have any idea about the quantity that's being produced. So we've really lost all control of the process.
Do we have any national sense of the demand for these drugs?
No, which is just inconceivable. But the FDA really doesn't have a way to monitor the supply, and they certainly don't have the ability to foresee changes that may drive up demand for a drug.
That's what got us here, a factory in India that makes a significant portion of our carboplatin and cisplatin shut down production late last year after a 36-page report identified troubling violations, including a worker pouring acid in a bin of documents to destroy evidence of problematic results.
Every time that I go, I'm hoping that it's going to be the day that my drug that I should be on is in.
For now, Kristen Landau is using a different drug. The side effects are much worse, but for the time being, it's working. And that's time she says she and other patients can't afford to waste while lawmakers bicker over solutions.
Figure it out. I would like them to think about how they would feel if it was their mom or their sister, someone that they cared about that needed this.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
Coming up next on the National Desk, why newly installed armrests on benches in a Rhode Island community are causing controversy. We'll explain when we return. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
We are seeing the normalcy that was there prior to the pandemic.
A refreshing return to pre-pandemic levels for the hospitality industry in Rhode Island. The Department of Revenue reports tax revenues from meals, drinks, and hotels have bounced back to pre-COVID levels. DOR says the trend points to more and more people getting out to bigger events and shopping at local stores, like Hummingbird, a Caribbean restaurant in Newport.
We're doing better now. We have a lot of customers from all over, Boston, New York.
Hotels in Newport surpassed 2019 revenue by a whopping 32%, the report indicates. Andy Ross of the Brenton Hotel says Newport was always a good escape for people.
Things are a little bit more predictable in terms of traffic and exploration, but with that predictability comes a lot of comfort.
One-year-old Everly Mae Settlemeyer of Visalia has finally began a working treatment against a rare type of aggressive cancer after months of misdiagnosis. Her parents, Kayla Rodriguez and Kenneth Settlemeyer, says the fight against stage 4 neuroblastoma started last year, a few days before Christmas.
We noticed Everly was having some yellowing above her eye or on her eyelid. And, we thought, okay, maybe she's learning how to walk. She tripped and fell and we just didn't notice. And then it progressively got worse.
She says Everly's eyes got really puffy and it looked like she had a black eye. So she took her to get checked out.
After 8 hours in the ER, they had told me that it was cancer.
She's already showing signs of improvement.
And homeless rights advocates in Woonsocket, Rhode Island say new armrests on some city benches are targeting people who just don't have a place to sleep. Locals say the homeless from the area are known to stay at that park where these armrests were installed. But the city's mayor says benches are not for lying down and the armrests help people who may need assistance. We're back after this. And as we come back, here's some breaking news we're following. We just learned that Cecily Aguilar has been sentenced to 30 years in prison for her role in covering up the remains of soldier Vanessa Guillen. The central figure portrayed, that's not part of that story. Again, the breaking development there is what we've just brought to you right now. Cecily Aguilar now sentenced there for 30 years in prison. That's all for us right now. Don't forget to join us for the evening edition of the National Desk. Check your local listings. I'm Eugene Ramirez. See you soon.